Yesterday I flattened the battery of the Nissan. I showed you that in the last video. I'm just going to pop up there now and take off the charger, and we'll put on the Troopy. The Troopy's been sitting there now for months. 4 months at least, probably. While we've been doing some work on it and getting our knees repaired. So let's put the charger on the Troopy and have another quick look at what it is that we can do with it. Meantime, I've got something to show you. So I showed you in that video about teaching myself welding that I couldn't see a damn thing with that helmet that I'd bought. You know, I'd just gone ahead and bought the cheapest, which is often the way that there's a saying that goes, the poor man always pays twice, and I did. Because I bought, I thought, you know, a cheap helmet, 35 bucks or whatever the hell it was, and I thought that'd do the job, but you actually can't see anything in daylight with the helmet down, so you gotta lift it up to weld, you know, and then drop the helmet at the same time. So I bought myself an auto dimming one. Here she is here. We'll put it away for now, but when we get to that, we'll give it a shot, and I'll show you how it goes. Now, where are we up to here? Well, Chloe, the dog, is saying we're a bit slow and a bit behind schedule. But let's have a look at what we've got to do here now still. So we've got to put on the fan, then we can put on the belts. So I don't think there's anything stopping us doing that, including the alternator, etc. So let's go ahead and do that. Part of the problem here seems to be getting a good connection while I hold it on, because I can't reasonably with only 2 hands. But there we go, 13.48 while charging. So let's see what the voltage is. So 11.94, so that's pretty well down. Let's put the charger on it and give it a bit of a boost. Just before we put these on, let's just make sure that we've actually tightened up that bracket, which is the one that's holding the alternator, or will hold the alternator, because it's behind the fan, and we definitely don't want to be trying to get to it. Actually, it's not 12 mil at all. What is it? Must be 13 or 14 mil. 14 mil maybe. 14 mil it is. Yep, now good and tight. Well, that one is. That one could use a little. Now let's do it. This is tapered, so once we tighten it up, it'll pull it in really tight. So let's go ahead and do that. And they are 12 mil. I know that to be true. Now to do these up good and tight, we've got to stop that wheel from turning, and the best way to do that is with the screwdriver. use something that can't slip. That's pretty good. So it's got full instructions, so as long as we follow these, we really can't go too far wrong. We need to crank that screw all the way out so that we can push the alternator all the way in, and even so she's a bit tricky just to get that on there. So they're a fairly tight belt. So there's one. And here's the second. So these are paired, as I said right at the start, so that should one break, there's a backup. But I'll tell you what I didn't check, so let's just do that now. It'll take some moment to take it off, that there actually isn't a direction of travel. It doesn't look like it. Strangely enough, it's a Mitsubishi belt. But Mitsubishi, I think, are in fact belt makers, obviously. Right, so both belts are on in their respective grooves all the way around, and we need to, I think, screw that in, which pulls out the alternator, and then from memory there's like a locking bolt nut in the front which holds it in place. Yeah. You know, you try on a 13 and it seems too small, you try on a 14 and it seems too big. So you go back to the 13 and find it's still not that. It has to be the 14. There's got to be a better way. There is that lock nut right in the front. Let's assume that's also a 14. Now that, I'm hoping, should lock that in place. So where that bracket fastens to the block, there's a bolt there, so let's just check the tightness of that, assuming we can get to it. It's right in there, and it's good and tight anyway. I have to say, these belts actually have fantastic fit. There we go. Now we tighten that up, and then once that's where it is, this is the lock nut for that one. So you can see it coming up. Well, maybe you can't because I've got my arm in the way, but see how that's rising up. And that's tensioning it. That's pretty good. So we can always come back and check the tension of these belts. They aren't the easiest to get to, but we can check them once it's done a couple of thousand Ks or something. But that's the two belts on. Let's just check. So still to happen is the air cleaner to go on, and so it's the one that hooks up here and also goes out through the guard there. Now, whether you can see that or not, radiator goes in here. We've got, let me just show you this. I'll grab the other camera. So we've got some packing here. You see that there? That's the packing that is in the air conditioning radiator, and it's popped out. I think if we go down there and get up underneath and then see if we can straighten it out and poke it back in. So when we put the radiator in, which is a fairly close fit, we don't knock it further out. So we'll do that before we put the radiator in. Before we put the radiator in, we've got to put on that shroud because it has to sit over the fan here and then come back to the radiator once it's in, because it won't fit between the two. We've got to put on the air cleaner, which goes on here, here and here, and then the hose goes out through the guard there. That's the inlet that goes up to the snorkel or raised air intake, and then this is the inlet for the pipe for clean air. There's not really a heap left to do. I think next time round what we might do is do some painting, because we've got all of those things that we wanted to paint. This is just water, it's not tea. I'll go inside and have a tea later. I'd like to paint the air filter cover at the very least, and then maybe just before we get that on, we'll also spray that Lano seal, steel seal or whatever it's called, up underneath, and underneath where the air cleaner box goes. We've also got to do the grill, so I've got the paint for that. So maybe the first thing we'll do is we'll get out that table, we'll get out all of the paints that we've got and set them all up so we can see what it is that we've got to paint with, because I've been buying quite a few and they're in boxes and bags and stuff just over there. So we'll pull them all out and see what we've got and then allocate them to a job. Meanwhile, cheers, have a water. Don't forget to hydrate. See you next time. So we've grabbed out all of those cans of paint. It's not all of them, because there's things like spray putties and basic paints as well, but this is the majority of those special paints that we planned on using for things like the bull bar or for engine parts. But just before we start, I've got a job that I want to complete. You'll recall way back I was burning out these tree stumps, and I've done that, burned them below ground, and then put in some topsoil to grass over here and here, even though I drove over this one. We can level that off though. But there's one more, and that's here. So I've started the fire on this, but let's go and grab some more sticks. So I'll just leave that to burn. So behind me, a couple of things that I wanted to try and see if we could get a coat of paint on. Look, it's not ideal, it's hot, and it's not the best idea to paint things while they're hot, because you just can't keep a wet edge. You know, the paint dries as fast as you put it on. But in Queensland, we're not really necessarily going to ever be able to escape that unless we wait for winter. In which case the sun is still hot, or unless you put it in under shade. And I don't really have enough space, unfortunately, to find shelter or space. I mean, you know, it is what it is. So let's throw a coat of paint on a couple of these things. So while I was trying to repack those fins in there, the cooling fins, this bottom bit fell off completely. So it's not really serving any purpose, given that these are the cooling tubes here, and they run between just basically to keep them separate. So I've got to maybe get something like JB Weld or something and just glue that back up. It's not going to make a huge amount of difference, given the amount of fins that are in the cooling, the condenser. It's not bad. Cool ridge with a hint of lime and cucumber. Aged carefully in the shed just there, you know, for several months, so it's probably rank. However, who really cares when you're thirsty? Anything will do. Now, we've painted these few items, you know, the air cleaner and then the radiator shroud. We do have to attend to this these fins on the bottom of the radiator, or air conditioning radiator condenser. From there, there's not a great deal more to do, because we can then drop in the radiator, that shroud, put the air cleaner back on. Just before we do that, though, as I said to you, we'll give it a bit of a degrease underneath where the air cleaner goes, and then we might see about spraying some of that Lano seal, steel seal, whatever the hell, Lano Tech steel seal, that's what it's called. Anyway, look, it's New Year's Day. Happy New Year to you, and you got to keep yourself hydrated. We got that JB weld. Did I tell you about that? We got that, and what we're going to do today is, well, what I've just been doing actually is unboxing and assembling and starting up the generator. Did I tell you about that? Anyway, look, check out the video on that. It's already up. What we're going to do today is just do some degreasing, I think. It's pretty late in the day. The weather's fairly unreliable. So let's just do that. We've done the degreasing, we'll let that dry overnight. Tomorrow we'll attack the air conditioning condenser with radiator weld. So this is a 2-pack I can't even see the stuff. Oh, I see, right, so there's a couple little sachets. Let's open this up. So here there's a little mixing stick, some fiberglass, a label, and the 2 little sachets, one of the activator and one of the epoxy. So we'll mix all that up tomorrow and put it on this thingy around here that I told you about, the where the fins have fallen down. Glue all that back up, and so then we can let that dry overnight, so we can put the radiator back in, put the radiator hoses back on, and fire it up. But will it start? First of all, there's a whole panel or row or whatever you want to call it that's fallen down, and I've just tied it up at the moment out of the way. But then in behind that, we've got to see if we can tuck in some of that other some of those other fins. You can see what the issue is here, and that is that this row here, that one's probably a bit in, but it's not too bad. But this row here is kind of really collapsed, so we can pull out some of this center section, I think, and then everything will fit a little better in there. This little junk is really all we pulled out, and we've straightened it up reasonably well in there. The next thing to do is to get mixing that stuff up, but I'll just show you what we've done under here. Not pretty, but it'll do us. Now the thing is that this is really a tiny portion here of the cooling of the whole radiator, and so it's not going to make a massive difference once we put some glue in there to hold it in place, and then glued this panel here, which is slipped down back up again. I think it'll be as good as new. It actually suggests, I don't know if you can see any of this, but that you squeeze this until that bursts and it goes in here, and or the two mix, you know, and then you knead them in there. But personally, I think I might be better off just mixing it up in a bowl, just squeezing the contents of both into here and mixing them up. It seems to set in record time too, so 5 minutes, so we don't have a lot of time for working it. So I think what we might do is do it in 2 batches. So we'll do half a pouch and half a pouch as best we can, and then mix up the other half. We've put the radiator weld stuff on, and I'll show you some of that in a minute, but first I just wanted to show you this. We cleaned up all of this underneath the air box and around the back. It's not spotless, it's 35 years old, so what do you really expect? But it's pretty damn good. So what I'm going to do before I do anything else is spray it all with the Lanotech Steel Seal, and then we can put the air cleaner on. Now with regard to that, these are the painted parts. So this is obviously the radiator cowling. There's the air filter box lid, and that's that little basin or bin that sits up here underneath here that the water, if any water comes in, drips into. So they've all been painted up. It's not a fantastic job. I'm not a professional painter, and they're only engine parts, so it doesn't really matter all that much anyway. What we can do, and we might even have a look at doing that now, is this grill and the badge. So we've got to work out how the hell we're going to keep that white and everything else grey. One way to do it might be to try masking, but I think I'll give that some thought. First thing we're going to do is to spray this bar here in particular to get some of this rust converter, but it also leaves a primer on top too, so let's spray this on and we can let it dry while we go and do something else. This is the diesel badge. It feels a bit chalky, this paint. I mean, it's supposedly the right paint, but not only does it feel chalky, it leaves a lot of air bubbles. Now that could be the skill of the painter rather than the paint. But it's a grill, so what does it matter? Now let's just take this off, because the next part is the difficult one, and that is the actual masking up of the letters, so we can paint the rest. You know, I got a song stuck in my head, you know, that kind of soundtrack or radio track or whatever the hell it's called, and I'll see if you can guess what it is. The first hint is that it's sung by Aaron Neville. It's a duet with Linda Ronstadt. Well, Linda Ronstadt is a fantastic singer all the way back to the 60s when she was with, if I'm not mistaken, the Stone Ponies. Principally a country singer, but sort of branched out into mainstream. But by, I think it was about 2013, she had to stop singing and she was devastated, but I believe she had Parkinson's and could no longer hold a note, a little like myself. Except I don't have Parkinson's, but I think it just, as you get older, holding notes is increasingly difficult. Now what we have to do is put on masking tape over all of this. I won't subject you to that because that could be tedious, watching a silly old bugger put masking tape on letters, but I'll do it and then I'll show you, hey? I tried, I really did, but the difficulty was in fact trying to keep the shape, so I think I'm going to have to paint the whole thing grey and then hand paint the lettering, as tedious as that might be. Let's clean it up and then paint it. That is just not the right paint for this job because I wiped it over with Kero just to get the sticky adhesive off from the masking tape, and it wiped the paint off completely. Now I appreciate that not many cars are going to get splashed with Kero, but you don't want something that's so easily wiped off with a solvent. You know, a splash of anything could destroy your paint job. So I'll go and get some different paint. In the meantime, let's go and get that Lanatec and spray through here, and in fact the whole of that back and even up under here, now that we've done this and it's dried. But what we can then do is fit the air box and even look about dropping the radiator in. Well, I got the air cleaner box in. I put the old air cleaner in for now, just until we run it a bit, and then we'll, just in case there's any rubbish in the snorkel or whatever, and we'll just let it suck all the air out of that first. But it wasn't an easy job at all. You've got to reach in under, and I had the same difficulty getting it out. Reaching under, and one stage I dropped the bolt, and well, you know what it's like when that happens. So I searched everywhere, but it hadn't actually fallen all the way to the ground, and so my search was futile. In the end, I had to take out the box, and it was just sitting just underneath. So I'm a bit shattered. Anyway, we got that in. We've got all the hoses on. We put on the bottom radiator hose at the engine block side. But of course, until we put the radiator itself in, we can't do anything about that. So let's call it a day, and we'll come back, and then the next job really is just putting in the cowling and the radiator, and then we can fill it up with water, and well, let's start. So we got the airbox in yesterday, which was completely exhausting, and hooked up the hoses here, and also ran out the inlet to here. And I did say once that the best way to accomplish your goals is to set very small ones, but this time we're going to get the radiator in, and we're going to fill it up with water. Initially just clear water or plain tap water until we've run it for a bit, because if there's any rubbish in the block or the cooling system, let's get that out, and then we'll drain it, and then we'll fill it up with that coolant. So let's get stuck in and do that. First thing we'll do is check the battery voltage, because we did put the charger on, but it's been another couple of weeks. First things first is to put in the cowl, because As I said the other day, you actually can't fit this once the radiator's on, because there's not enough room between the radiator and the fan. So if we put the cowl on now, we can just tuck it out of the way, like so, and the radiator should drop down there, all going well. And we should have all of the bolts that we need to fit both the radiator and that cowling. As always, it helps to have a second person, but I didn't. But the bottom radiator outlet is quite long, and so I had to kind of get underneath and maneuver the cowling out of the way so I could get it below it. But we've done that, so now it's a matter, I think, of just trying to position this where the first holes are, like so, and so, and then putting a couple of nuts on to hold it in place. Now this is how experts get things done quickly and people like me don't, and that's because this, I believe, is in upside down, because the hole in it is offset to that side, which means that when the fan lines up it's too far over to this side. Now I can't rotate it while it's in position. So what it means is pulling the radiator back out after I have attached the bottom hose. Oh dear. Well, there's nothing for it. Radiator's in, cowling is partly on, but we've got to fit this overflow bottle. Right now we're just going to take a bit of a break and then we'll come back and finish this job. Oh, we've got to put the hose on as well. We're on the home stretch. I've just got to put on that top hose, put on the overflow bottle, tighten up all of the bolts holding on the radiator cowling, and we can top her up with water. Right, everything is on, everything is tightened up, I believe. Hoses, let's go and put some water in it and see if we can detect any leaks. Like I said, for now we'll just put in regular water. amazing, you know, after, well, I think it was August I parked it there, so that's now 5 months, and it started up first time, and it's running beautifully. I've still got a couple of things to do. Obviously it's got no bull bar or grill on, and there are no plates on it at the moment. And the splash guard's not back on yet, but otherwise this is fantastic. Now, we haven't actually done the oil change or coolant change because we wanted to just run it, or fuel filter change for that matter. We wanted to just run it, and let me just stop here. There's a parcel there to pick up. Let's see what that is. I've no idea what it is. I'll go and have a look in a minute, but I'm just really overjoyed at this. This has been several months, like I've said to you. A lot of it to do with the fact that I was out of action for quite a while, and I'm slow. But this is now 5 months, and we're back on the road. All I've got to do is finish off a couple of things, and we should go for a good ride, hey?